Information Network and BINnews.com.
Get big savings and big rewards during Provember. Save $80 on a DeWalt 20-volt 2-tool combo kit and earn 3 times the bonus points. While supplies last, selection varies by location. Bonus points calculated before taxes and fees after applicable discounts, if any. Valid through 11/22, subject to change.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
I'm a bad man.
All 4 of LA's major pro teams were in action Sunday. The Clippers and Chargers get a win. The Rams and Lakers came up short. The Lakers lost by 5 in overtime in Sacramento. The loss spoiled a monster game from Anthony Davis. 30 points, 16 rebounds, 3 blocked shots, and 2 steals. LeBron had 27 but committed 8 turnovers. The Clippers beat San Antonio by 40 at Crypto.com. 21 points from Kawhi Leonard, 19 each from Paul George and Russell Westbrook. The Chargers beat Chicago to improve to 3-4, 2 interceptions by the Chargers defense. The Rams lost by 23 at Dallas. They fall to 3-5. Quarterback Matthew Stafford may have suffered a broken right thumb. The Rams hope to know more about the extent of his injury later today. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Environmental justice, pollution, and climate. In Los Angeles and across America, people of color are suffering and dying from disproportionate health impacts on a planet that has less than 10 years to prevent irreversible damage. Heat illnesses, respiratory illnesses, water-related illnesses, food system impacts, insect-related diseases, black maternal health, and mental health effects. As the impacts of climate change mount, millions of vulnerable people, our people, are going to bear the brunt of these extreme environmental events, which will likely lead to forced displacement, loss of cultural identity, and other related risks. These realities are as real as rain. Stay tuned to KBLA Talk 1580 for more details about the most progressive multimedia and live events campaign any black media outlet has ever undertaken to combat the climate catastrophe. Experts, events, empowerment. It's all on the way from unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580. We don't black down. We level up.
Level up, 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 level up.
1, 2, 3, go! Try to keep it coming. Things ain't always smooth, but I'll be alright as long as I can find the groove. Yes, I will. Somehow I know that I can make it. You seem to like my style. Don't you worry, I'm gonna be around a while.
Live from historic Leimert Park in Los Angeles, California, I'm Tavis Smiley, and I'm so glad to see you and me back in stride again. Before we get started with today's show, let me invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Real Tavis Smiley and get updates on X, that's formerly Twitter, at Tavis Smiley. By the way, should you miss any part of today's program or want to catch up on previous shows, you can always visit thetavisSmileyShow.com or wherever you get your podcasts. That's the TavisSmileyShow.com, or again, wherever you get your podcast, and listen to the Tavis Smiley podcast at your leisure. Another great show on tap for you today. In our second hour, I should start by saying, you'll hear it in just a second, we're going to try to squeeze an 80-pound show into a 45-pound bag. Here's what I mean. In our second hour, 2 conversations. Up first, black folk and heart disease. A lot of folk are choosing to live with a healthy heart by adopting a plant-based diet. Let's face it, a lot of what we are eating these days is, in fact, killing us, and so we'll talk about plant-based eating as a way to protect your heart with one of the nation's leading cardiologists, Dr. Kim A. Williams, on the B side, that's the top side rather, the top side of hour two. On the B side of hour two, a conversation with the authors of Illmatic Consequences, the clapback to opponents of critical race theory. Gotta love the book's title, Illmatic Consequences, the clapback to opponents of critical race theory, CRT. Walter Greason and Danian Jerry, who assembled a broad range of scholars and artists to have their say in this new book. We'll talk about that on the B side of hour two. In hour three, two more conversations. First, the suspected earliest novel written by an African-American woman is in doubt no longer. Greg Hekimovich, a literary scholar, has been able to finally authenticate the manuscript and joins us at the top of hour three to talk about the earliest novel written by an African-American woman. That's at hour three at the top. On the B side of hour three, President Joe Biden today issued a sweeping executive order on AI, artificial intelligence. We'll talk about it with Dr. Joy Bolamwini, and also discuss the revelatory work she is doing to address the myriad challenges of AI for black folk and people of color, specifically facial recognition, which is apparently encoded with deeply, deeply ingrained biases. Dr. Joy Bolamwini has a new book out. It's called Unmasking AI, My Mission to Protect What is Human in a World of Machines. And in this first hour, two more conversations. Help, Lord. On the B side of this hour, we'll talk politics with one of our frequent contributors, the brilliant public intellectual, Paul Henderson out of San Francisco. And in the aftermath of that mass shooting and massive manhunt in Maine, we'll talk about gun violence, mental health, and more. Plus, GOP candidates for president are starting to drop like flies. And one congressional Democrat has launched his long shot bid to deny Joe Biden his party's nomination, and Donald Trump's kids have been ordered to testify in his New York civil fraud trial, and he is livid about that. A whole lot to get to with Paul Henderson on the backside of this hour. We start today's show, all that said, with the escalating war between Israel and Hamas, never mind the ever-increasing level of public protest and calls around the globe for a ceasefire. Pleased to welcome author and co-host of the weekly Democracy-ish podcast, Wajahat Ali. Welcome back to our program. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, sir, and allow me to say proactively that I condemn Hamas, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, Al-Qaeda, and any other violent militant extremist organization. I know your show is not that show, but just to give you a taste, if you are Muslim or Arab, and I'm a Pakistani American, not Palestinian, you are proactively expected to and demanded to condemn violent acts done by violent people you've never met. And this, black people know this, people of color know this, but especially if you're Muslim or Arab, this has happened since 9/11. And unfortunately, that cycle has repeated. So I love doing your show because we can actually get deeper and more nuanced and get beyond the BS.
As I said a moment ago, we're trying to squeeze an 80-pound show into a 45-pound bag.
Yeah.
Lots of combos today, and I'm glad we're starting with you. And let me start with what you just started with, and that is this. You commenced. I ain't said nothing to you yet. I ain't asked you a question. You come out the blocks with your disclaimer, and on the one hand, it's tongue in cheek and it's funny, and I get it. On the other hand, it's very serious that there are folk these days who are being canceled left and right. And it's as if you don't start the conversation, laying that disclaimer out, you're in trouble. How do you read that reality in this moment that it's so difficult even to have conversation about what's happening right now in the Middle East?
Yes, the Groundhog's Day. It's happened perpetually. For oftentimes people of color, black folks have to, have to always apologize for Louis Farrakhan, right? And always apologize for urban crime. And it's what happens when you completely dehumanize a people. When you dehumanize a people and flatten them and their narratives and their stories become a single story, especially the story of the villain, then you are a representative of that group, and your loyalty and your patriotism is always held as suspect in your own country. And as such, even though I am a Pakistani American, born and raised here, but because I'm Muslim, and because I, like many others around the world, espouse, I think very logical and rational ideas that, Palestinians need a path towards self-determination and that the occupation has to end for security for both Israel and Palestinians, that alone makes me a potential threat. So I have to then proactively condemn violent deeds done by violent people I've never met. And if you see my Twitter thread, people who are otherwise sane and rational, educated, this is what happens with dehumanization, Tavis, and you know this, you've talked about this on your show, is they don't see you as human. They just completely see you as the other. And otherwise rational people on their own account, publicly, for the world to see, have repeatedly told me to tell my friends, Hamas, to stop the bombing, have asked me, how come I haven't released the hostages? And you sit there and you go, listen, what's happening here? And if you just pause for a second, what happens is the constant vilification and dehumanization of people, where you see them only as enemies, savages, animals, Amalek, the word used by Netanyahu, which we can unpack, children of darkness, where there's no other narrative. And when you see people as a problem, that's when you come up with frightening solutions.
We're going to discuss Netanyahu, I promise, and a great deal more. Just getting started on Tavis Smiley, I guess, is Wajihad Ali. More when we come forward.
Seeking the truth, speaking the truth. This is the Tavis Smiley Show.
Escalade IQ. This the intro to the all-electric Cadillac, perfection like Zoom. And on a full charge, you get 450 miles without the stop. Haiku. This is what I do. Daddy fat in the lag since 92. Linked all the way back, panoramic roof. Come with 24-inch rim standard. Ooh, why? Shawty don't kill him. Cadillac diamond in the back, cold chillin'. And when I'm on attack, on the track is no ceiling. Sky's the limit. You hear me? You hear me? Straight drop, no parachutes. Lay lines like a longitude and latitude. Deal it, beloved, clearly we're hustling. Bustin', truckin'. Cadillac, Cadillac, Cadillac.
For more on the Escalade IQ, visit Cadillac.com.
Available late 2024. GM estimate 450-mile range on a full charge based on development testing and/or analytical projection consistent with SAHA 1634 revision 2017 MCT. Range subject to change prior to production. Annual rates may vary based on service factors, including ambiance temperature, terrain, battery age, and condition loading, and how you use and maintain your vehicle.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, Maisha Cairo here, KBLA, live at Chase Bank on Crenshaw and Vernon for the In This Together tour with female business owners, a day of empowerment, community panels, and best of all, tips on building business from marketing to capital. I was able to speak with Kate Luzio, former banking executive and now owner of Luminary, who partnered with Chase for this tour. She makes it her business to build community for business owners.
Yes, so I was a banker for 20 years before I decided to become an entrepreneur. 7 of those years were actually at JP Morgan Chase. One of the biggest things that I had going into my entrepreneurial journey was a big background in banking.
So what advice are you giving business owners looking for financial backing today?
So Chase brings in so much knowledge and the opportunity to understand what financial tools are out there for business owners to build, grow, and scale their business. A lot of business owners will say, well, I need to get a loan immediately. Well, you wouldn't just lend money to your friend if you didn't know why they needed it. I tell every business owner, you need a business plan, you need financial projections, you need a banker. Because you have to start building a relationship with a banker so that they get comfortable with how you're going to build that business and so that they can eventually support you in different ways.
Makes sense. So visit the Chase Community Center on Crenshaw and Vernon. Meet a banker today. Tell them about your business. I'm Maisha Cairo in the community for KBLA with JP Morgan Chase.
Los Angeles, black men are dying from preventable health causes and diseases, but you can be part of the solution. Join us Saturday, November 11th at the Michelle and Barack Obama Sports Complex next to Dorsey High for the African American Male Wellness 5K Walk and Run. Walk for your brother, walk for your father, walk for your son, walk for your uncle, walk for yourself. This is a free, family-friendly event for the entire community. We'll have free health screenings, vendors, kids' activities, and more. We'll see you at 8 a.m.
Made fresh daily in the Mert Park, Los Angeles, California. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Our guest is Wajihad Ali, and he is the co-host of a weekly podcast, which I love, called Democracy-ish. And I'm pleased to have him back on this program. I was reading, I've been reading everything, of course, Wajihad, as have you. I saw a pretty provocative piece by Nicholas Kristof in the New York Times. He's been taking on the chin lately, but writing some pretty truthful pieces, painfully truthful. But he's bold enough to take the heat. And he's quoting a young Palestinian girl in his piece that's out today, I believe. And she says to him, I feel like we are overpaying for a sin that we did not commit, that we are overpaying for a sin that we did not commit. She's speaking, not literally, but parenthetically, I guess, on behalf of all these children in Gaza, these babies, and I do mean babies literally, and kids and teenagers who are being killed in this process, thousands of them dead at this point, and that's been verified not just by Gazan authorities, but indeed by the UN. How do you respond to that comment that she feels like this generation, is overpaying for a sin that they did not commit?
It ties in directly to what we're saying is when you dehumanize an entire people, it's perfectly fine to then have collective punishment against them, where a woman, a child, an elder, a clergy, Palestinian Christian, yes, folks, there are Christians there, are all seen the enemy, right? They're deemed as Hamas. So the dark humor goes Palestinian equals Arab equals Muslim equals Hamas equals Islamic Jihad equals Hezbollah equals the enemy. The language that Netanyahu, who's the current leader of Israel, used was that he didn't say Hamas, but he said they are all the children and people of darkness. Then he used biblical quotes, this messianic kind of fanatical type of genocidal language where he compared not Hamas, but the Palestinians to Amalek. And for those who study the Bible, in traditions, the Amalek, in Jewish traditions, like every generation has an Amalek, an enemy of the Jewish people that needs to be eradicated. That's the type of language that he's using against all Palestinians. So when you see an entire population of 2.2 million people who are living in an open-air prison where every day there's a human rights catastrophe as evidenced by 18 human rights organizations, and plus, Tavis, now we can all see with our own eyes, right? So you don't have to read the books or go to the 18 human rights organizations. You see it. You sit there and go, well, how can this happen? And you sit there and go, oh, this happens when the Israeli leadership right now, led by Netanyahu, who, by the way, in his leadership has some of the most extreme individuals who would not have been part of Israel 10 years ago. It reminds me a lot of MAGA, right? I'm talking about people like Ben Gvir, a right-wing Israeli settler with a history of inciting violence against Palestinians, who, by the way, is the national security minister. So when you have this type of language from a leader and you have an ongoing occupation that really dehumanizes, chokes people, and I recommend anyone who has the ability to go, if you have the ability to go see it in the West Bank. It becomes clear as day. This is when the victims are not seen as victims, but they're seen as terrorists who are worthy of collective punishment for the sins of Hamas. And folks, Hamas has been in power for 16 years. There have been no elections in Gaza for 16 years. And the people the majority of the Gaza's population were either babies or not born when Hamas got into power. Yep. So that's what's happening right now.
Since you mentioned Bibi Netanyahu, I've long said, and this audience has heard this more than once, that I believe that he's the wrong person. I'm not even getting to the issue of what you think about the conflict right now. I'm just suggesting that I believe now and have for quite some time that Bibi Netanyahu is the wrong person to be leading, the wrong person at the table, if you will, for Israel. And I'm not the only one. There are a lot of Israelis who feel that way. It's no different. That's right. It's no different than when Donald Trump was president. He was the president of these United States, but a whole lot of us, tens of millions of us, did not support that, did not agree with that, thought he was a horrible choice. So it's the same in Israel. Just because Bibi is their leader and making these comments does not mean that the overwhelming number of Israelis necessarily agree with him. So since you're talking about Bibi, let's put a finer point on this. I think it's important for folks to understand that at some point back in the day, Bibi Netanyahu actually supported Hamas.
Yeah.
You heard me correctly. Yeah. Bibi Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel right now, who's making all these comments that Wajahat just mentioned and quoted, he supported Hamas at one point. Let me quote Bibi Netanyahu from 2019. Those who want to thwart the possibility of a Palestinian state, those who want to thwart the possibility of a Palestinian state should support the strengthening of Hamas and the transfer of money to Hamas. One more again. Those who want to thwart the possibility of a Palestinian state should support the strengthening of Hamas and the transfer of money to Hamas, close quote. That's Bibi Netanyahu in 2019. How do you juxtapose that, Wajahat, with Bibi in 2019 and the comments Bibi is making right now in 2023?
It's been consistent ever since Hamas formed. Israeli government has used it as a divide and conquer technique, right? So before, it was like, oh, the PLO, which is Arab nationalism, right, is the biggest threat. Let's invest in the Islamist movement. And then later on, Israelis themselves said, part of the government said this was a mistake. And here's Netanyahu openly saying, and this according to the Haaretz, and the Security Council said, oh, we need Hamas because A, like you said, it kills the idea of a two-state solution. And B, the other thing is it divides Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza, right? It's a divide and conquer technique. West Bank is controlled by the Palestinian Authority. Gaza, it's controlled by Hamas. So you weaken and divide and isolate the Palestinians, and you thwart any possibility of the two-state solution. So, yeah, let's support them and fund them and enable them. And so I always tell people that if Israel really wants to go after Hamas and Hamas enablers, you have to have Netanyahu submitting himself and resigning to the IDF, like today. He should be the first one. And it's important. The important point you made that a lot of Israelis are protesting against Netanyahu, right? The mindset is the following. You hear this a lot, folks. Well, Hamas is the elected government, so that's why Palestinians are responsible. Just pause for a second and reflect on that. That's the same rationalization that Hamas uses to attack innocent Israeli citizens. And it's the same rationalization, Tavis, that Al-Qaeda used to attack America, including Muslim Americans. You all are all complicit. You voted for Bush. You voted for Trump. So you are a legitimate target.
Oh, it's a powerful point. And as we say around here, you got to get your frame right, and you are putting us in the right frame. But let's talk about Hamas, since you've raised them a few times now. There are those who believe, on the flip side of this conversation, that Hamas is responsible for these civilian deaths. Indeed, their strategy relies on enticing, if you will, tempting Israel to come at them, knowing that civilian lives, knowing that the lives of babies and innocents are going to be lost. And they build these tunnels underneath hospitals and schools and mosques. And so they know that when they entice Israel to come in, we now know that Israel has been engaging an air war. Now they're headed in on the ground. But how do you respond to those who say it is Hamas who's responsible for the killing of these precious babies that we were talking about? Because, again, when you build tunnels underneath hospitals and schools and mosques and you booby-trap apartments, et cetera, where everyday people live, civilians live, then you're responsible, not Israel.
So Hamas is a violent militant organization that is responsible for committing war crimes and killing Israeli civilians, right? It's also corrupt. It's also authoritarian. And it is not beloved by the Palestinian people. It has failed the Palestinian people. But Hamas is also not an irrational actor. And it's important for people to know that, right? Because people think, oh, evil and demon, and they're just crazy. In a sense, they're not irrational because what they're doing is what Al-Qaeda did to the United States, right? It was the strategy called death by 1,000 cuts. We'll overextend them. We'll lure them out. They'll sustain casualties. They'll bleed money. The world will turn against them, right? We are, what they'll be saying is we're already stuck. We're screwed. We're in an open-air prison. We're occupied. So, okay, fine. You're killing us already, and you're going to kill us already. So kill more of us, but we're going to kill you too. Does that make sense? And also, by kind of enticing Israel into this long war, it's a trap. That's what some people have said, is that they want Israel to overextend. And the reason why Hamas, in addition to the violent crimes they do, is also a terrible actor is because, like you said, they have to know that the victims will be the Palestinian people who are stuck. But for Hamas, then, just like Netanyahu, they get to stay in power. See, we're your defender. See, we're the one fighting back. See, look, we told you how terrible Israel was, and we're the only ones at least striking. So you need us. So in a way, Hamas and Netanyahu both deserve each other because they're both corrupt extremist leaders who are only doing this to protect their own power right now. And unfortunately, Israel is falling into Hamas's trap. And it reminds me, for those who want an analogy, of the post-9/11 problem that America fell into. The whole world empathized with America and felt our pain. But that rage and pain then translated into terrible policies and the reckless war on terror, which left what? generations of bloodshed and self-destruction. And that's my fear with what's happening with Israel right now.
Watching my time, got about 5 minutes left. I want to cover a few more topics. Let me move a little more swiftly here. Let me go from BB to his friend Joe Biden, the president of these United States, and just ask a point-blank question: whether or not you think Joe Biden, by his actions, by his words, by his deeds, has up until this point shown an indifference to the suffering and the death of Palestinians.
Yeah, he could do better, man. He could do better. And, I know people are thinking, Muslims and Arabs are just really or Palestinians are really just super sensitive. But just look at his words. Last thing I'll say, I know you want to move quickly. Last week, when he made that comment about Palestinian casualties and dismissed the number just because it's a Hamas-run organization, that was the straw that, if you will, broke a lot of people. A lot of people are like, I can't vote for this guy.
Yeah. No, he made it very clear. I don't trust the numbers, and now those numbers have been verified by the UN.
Yep.
So I don't know what the president says today, but he's I don't buy the numbers. I don't believe the numbers. I don't own that. And now again, they've been verified by the UN. So what he says today, again, I don't know. One could have argued. One could argue could have argued that for a long time in this country, the peace movement was basically on life support. I mean, it's not like the 60s, right? When the peace movement was thriving and alive and well. And yet, over the last few days, I've seen an increasing number of protests. Frankly, I've not seen these kind of protests in a long time. Literally from New York to Los Angeles, where I sit right now, protests all across this country. There were protests in Russia, protests around the globe about what's happening in the Middle East. Many people, of course, calling for a ceasefire. What do you make of the increasing number of protests?
I feel very encouraged by it, but I'm also a graybeard like you, Tavis, and we remember that we were the ones who protested the post 9/11 war on terror. So many people came out, but power was blind to itself and ignored all of us. And this is where I think, again, going back to 9/11, because even though most of us haven't forgotten, thankfully, maybe, just maybe, in the shadow of that tragedy and seeing this young generation rise up and not buying the same old propaganda and talking points, right, and being more nuanced, reading more books and seeing more perspectives, maybe this will be the shift. And you're already seeing the pressure affect and change the Biden administration's response in the past 2 weeks. You're seeing it in real time.
The question is whether or not, in these last 2 minutes, whether or not that shift happens before the following. And the following is this. Iran's president, as you know, said over the weekend, and I quote, "Israel crossed a red line which may force everyone to take action." That Israel crossed a red line, which may force everyone to take action. We know the everyone of which he speaks. That's his quote, though. So the bigger concern here, if you're not scared enough by all that Wajahat has already said, the larger concern here is that this war is going to grow wider. Your thoughts?
Yep. Yeah, well, number one, I just tweeted that before I came. It's not just to that region. We're also seeing the rise and explosion of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. You've seen it all over. You're seeing white nationalists literally play into that using divide and conquer. By the way, folks, they hate Jews, but they also hate the rest of us as well. And this is where in the final 30 seconds I'll say is why Americans have to speak up is because our government is more than just a small bystander. It has the strongest relationship with Israel. We give billions of dollars, we give weapons, we give aid, and we give diplomatic support. Yeah. When the United States uses its power to push, we've seen in the past 2 weeks, Israel has admitted we allowed humanitarian aid. That's what Israel said because the United States asked for it. And when you see Biden stress and push more and say, hey, bring back the internet, they brought back the internet. The United States and the Biden's leadership can do a lot more to influence and pressure Israel at this particular moment. And the Arab nations have to come together because this will explode, Tavis.
For you,
this will not be contained to the region.
For you, I'll squeeze out another 30 seconds right quick. Here's my extra question in 30 seconds. How long can the State Department, our State Department, and officials and diplomats refrain from using the words ceasefire and de-escalation?
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that because apparently they told their officials they can't use the word 2 weeks ago, and now you're seeing elected officials say it. I think they made another failure, and I think the time was 2 weeks ago, and every single day with the escalating crisis and the damage and civilian deaths, I think it's clear that we should have ceasefire and de-escalation. Those should not be Voldemort words, Tavis.
Nope. Joe Biden and Antony Blinken need to let the words ceasefire and de-escalation come out of their mouths sooner than later, but I digress on that. Wajahat Ali is an author. His book is called Go Back to Where You Came From, and other helpful recommendations, and co-host of the weekly Democracy-ish podcast. Good to have you on, my friend. We'll do it again somewhere down the road. Take care of yourself.
Take care, man. Thank you.
Let's keep trying to squeeze this 80-pound show into a 45-pound bag. What, 6 more guests to go, Miles? It's going to be a long show. A good show, though. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Hope, agency, dignity. This is Tavis Smiley.
Can you dig it? Come on!
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Thank you for sharing a part of your Monday with us here on the Black Information Network. I'm Mike Moore. Now here's the latest. Former President Donald Trump is expected to testify in his New York civil fraud trial next week. His testimony comes after Donald Trump Jr. is expected to testify Wednesday, followed by Eric and Ivanka Trump. Trump is scheduled to testify on November 6th. The federal civil rights trial of a Louisville, Kentucky Metro Police detective involved in the killing of African-American Breonna Taylor begins today. Brett Hankinson was the only officer to face state charges in connection with her 2020 death, an incident that drew international attention. He was indicted last year along with 3 other officers accused of using excessive force when he fired his service weapon into Taylor's apartment. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Get big savings and big rewards during Provember. Save $80 on a DeWalt 20-volt 2-tool combo kit and earn 3 times the bonus points. While supplies last, selection varies by location. Bonus points calculated before taxes and fees after applicable discounts, if any. Valid through 11/22, subject to change.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. If you're like many people, you may think custom blinds is a job for expensive professionals. Well, at Blindster, if you have a tape measure and a screwdriver, you can install our custom blinds and save big. Plus, we guarantee they'll fit. Blindster.com.
Is this the time? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
I'm a bad man. All 4 of LA's major pro teams were in action Sunday. The Clippers and Chargers get a win. The Rams and Lakers came up short. The Lakers lost by 5 in overtime in Sacramento. The loss spoiled a monster game from Anthony Davis. 30 points, 16 rebounds, 3 blocked shots, and 2 steals. LeBron had 27 but committed 8 turnovers. The Clippers beat San Antonio by 40 at Crypto.com. 21 points from Kawhi Leonard, 19 each from Paul George and Russell Westbrook. The Chargers beat Chicago to improve to 3-4, 2 interceptions by the Chargers defense. The Rams lost by 23 at Dallas. They fall to 3-5. Quarterback Matthew Stafford may have suffered a broken right thumb. The Rams hope to know more about the extent of his injury later today. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
The Green Foundation, key health influencer, empowering our Black communities through action. The Green Foundation advocates for affordable health care, accessibility, and knows the importance of culturally relatable health care. Regardless of income, we believe it is a right for optimum health. The Green Foundation has been at the forefront for 25 years, dedicated solely to promoting prevention through early detection, annual screenings, and nutrition. We know you because we are you. Our hand-holding approach Hope supports you and your family to receive your right to be treated fairly and receiving quality healthcare services. We want you and your family to know COVID-19 was devastating to our families and to our wallet. We can build back better by understanding prevention, wearing your mask, washing your hands, social distancing, and understanding the impact of long COVID. Get the care you deserve. Take advantage of your privileges. Contact us, info@thegreenfoundation.net. info@thegreenfoundation.net.
For all of us, this generation and the next, there is simply no place in our lives for litter. And yet, it's everywhere we look. And unfortunately, it does belong to all of us. So, let's come together and create a litter-free, clean California, once and for all. Remember to properly dispose of your trash and recycling. Secure truckloads with tarps to keep debris from flying out. Clean out your car when you're at a gas station. Take pride in your community by organizing a cleanup event. Or join a cleanup event near you. Zero litter is the goal. Join us at cleanca.com. That's cleanca.com. Let's do it together. Brought to you by Caltrans. cleanca.com.
Motor Trend Group, LLC, seeks a release manager, web and mobile platforms in El Segundo, California, to develop next generation of Motor Trend software platforms for MotorTrend.com and Motor Trend streaming app. Remote work permitted. Salary of $177,029 to $178,029 per year. Send resume to Tyler Williams, Discovery Communications, LLC, 265 Brockview Center Way, Suite 401, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37919.
Let's get back to more of this rich dialogue with Tavis Smiley.
Please be joined now by our friend Paul Henderson, legal expert, public intellectual, former prosecutor, director of the award-winning San Francisco Department of Police Accountability. Paul, good to have you back. How are you today, sir?
Oh, I'm excited to be here. There's so much to talk about, and I've always got a song in my heart. I'm ready to sing.
Well, let's sing. I feel like, pardon the interruption, I don't know if you're a sports fan, but those who are sports fans who know Tony Kornheiser and Michael Wilbon's program PTI, they have a rundown on the board, and they spend every 2 or 3 minutes talking about a different subject. It's one of those half hours today. A lot to talk about, so let's run down the board. Let me start with this breaking news today. The UAW has come to a tentative agreement with General Motors. So now all three of them have gotten in line. The first to get in line was Ford. The second was Stellantis. And the third and final player to get their act together is General Motors. This is a big deal. I feel like the UAW under Sean Fain's leadership has been so successful in this regard, and it's really set a new standard, a higher standard for laborers, for everyday people, as Sly Stone might say, in this country. This is a huge deal. Quite successful was this campaign, these strikes led by the UAW. Paul, your thoughts?
I think what was really smart was splitting it up so that he could do one after the other. GM really did not have a choice. As long as the other two manufacturers were in line, it was just a matter of when the deal would come together and how much more he got from GM as compared to the others. I really can't wait to see the deal, to unpack it, to see if GM workers are going to be rewarded for the strategy of doing it this way, and for GM choosing to go last or holding out as long as they did for whatever the deal is.
Yep.
I can't wait to see the paperwork. It's always in the details.
Oh, sure. As this audience knows, I started out calling this a summer of strikes. The summer ended, the fall arrived, and I changed my phraseology to a season of strikes. And I must tell you, as I'm sitting here right now, just thinking about all the strikes we've covered over the last 6 months on this program, from Kaiser Permanente to what was about to be a UPS strike, to the unions, UAW, that is, a lot of successful strikes over the last 6 months, and so I think it's given a new spine, a backbone, if you will. We can no longer say, at least not at the moment, that the labor movement is on life support. You can't say that anymore. Dr. King once said famously, more than once in fact, that when you straighten your back up, you're going somewhere, because a man can only ride your back when it's bent. And it appears that labor is straightening up their back, and they've had some huge successes over the last 6 months. Put a pin in that for now. Let me move to issue number 2. Mike Johnson is new Speaker of the House. I have not spoken to you, Paul, since he was elevated. He's been doing a number of interviews. And what's becoming more and more clear to people was that in many respects, this new Speaker was not vetted. That is to say that they had to get somebody in. I think Republicans were tired of the storyline, the narrative that had set in that they couldn't, the gang who couldn't shoot straight, they couldn't get a speaker, and so they ended up settling on this guy out of Louisiana, Mike Johnson. So he's the new speaker, and yet the more that comes out about this guy, the more people are asking whether or not he is too extreme politically. Your thoughts?
Okay, so with Mike Johnson, I think the reason that he is there is because he is definitely a nod towards the more radicalized sect of the Republicans. Now, this is a MAGA Republican. He is a very conservative Republican. And here's the thing that people need to pay attention to about his becoming speaker. The three things that define his legacy in terms of who he is as a person and who he has been as a representative, heretofore a little-known conservative representative from Louisiana, is that he is one of the big election deniers. Mm-hmm. That is going to be a problem as we are heading into election season with the Democrat and Republican Party. The other two things that stand out to me about his background that I think are concerns for the rest of the country are his stands and his vote, specifically being an anti-abortionist. He wants abortions to be zero in the United States, and his very clear, specific, and conservative approach that is anti-gay and LGBT in this country. The things that we are going to see in the next few weeks challenging him, I think, are going to come up with, because we have some big things on the horizon that he's going to play a key role in. That's the war with Ukraine in terms of how it gets funded, the ever-growing crisis that's happening right now with Israel and Palestine that he's going to play a role in, both in terms of funding and support from the United States. And then the third thing, and this one is important, I hope viewers are going to pay attention to what is happening on November 17th, because that's when we need important approaches and consolidated votes for government shutdown. Mm-hmm. And Mike Johnson in particular, just in October, voted against supporting a package to prevent a government shutdown. And so it's coming up again. We know what he's done in the past. He is not the kind of leader that I think we would look to in this country to be collaborative. And so what that means for the country, I believe, is going to be a problem that's not where this country exists. And it's certainly not going to be something that allows us to build in the future, I think, in a collaborative way. That's just not who he is. And that's what that role is designed to be. You must be collaborative. That's exactly why they couldn't find someone for so long. And there's controversy over who sits in that seat from the Republican Party. Yep. That's before we even get to how they can collaborate or not collaborate with Democrats.
Next issue on the docket. 3 of Donald Trump's family members are set to testify in their father's New York civil fraud trial. He is none too happy about this. Your thoughts on what it means that prosecutors, Tish James, black woman, AG, New York State, has succeeded in convincing this judge that all 3 of these kids ought to testify?
Okay, so that part is brilliant. In terms of who testifies for the actual trial, I think is a red herring. Whether it's his children, it's going to be his whole fleet of lawyers. This is one of the tricks and one of the tools that Donald Trump typically uses in all of his cases, where he has an army of lawyers and an army of interchangeable executives around him that may or may not include his children. Mm-hmm. There's been some controversy and discussion before about whether or not his daughter would testify, whether or not she actually had control. This, however, is part of the strategy for him to surround himself with decision makers and advisors. And when the heat gets turned up, those are the individuals that take the blame. Now, for this case in particular, it's the 3 kids that are in the pipeline that may or may not testify. I'm less concerned with what they actually testify about, because the end of the pipeline, the end of the analysis, is whether or not Trump is going to be able to maintain control over the corporation as it exists now. Mm-hmm. And the rulings that we have in this case have already told us that that is not going to be the case. There's already been a summary judgment on some of the issues, separate from there not being a jury trial, because that's a whole nother conversation. Mm-hmm. But there's already been a decision made by the judge about the level of fraud being both persistent and pervasive in this case. And that fraud in and of itself has consequences. The real issue in this case right now is not so much if he did it, but how badly he did it and to what extent the sentence and the repercussion from the rulings from the court are going to affect Donald Trump and his industry. And that's what's on the line. But that is a big deal for Donald Trump and is going to have some lasting effects in terms of how he operates as a business and an entity, which ties in specifically to how much he can access his wealth to the degree you define it as wealth for his run for presidency. That's why all of this matters.
It does matter. And yet I'm not naive. I'm not a corporate lawyer, but I know the word restructuring. And so when all is said and done, whatever he has to do to restructure, I'm sure he will do that. And let's put a finer point on this. This is, again, a civil trial. So for those who are thinking that he may end up going to jail, not in this case. There's no jail time here. It's a civil case, not a criminal case. So that will not be happening. And again, I come back to the issue of restructuring. When we come forward, there's some new information about this Robert R. Card II. This is the gunman who killed those 18 persons in Maine. There's some new information about his mental health condition, and more expressly, that he made clear before he walked into a gun shop, when he walked into a gun shop, that he had mental health issues, and yet he was allowed to purchase this equipment. We'll talk about that with Paul Henderson. When we come forward, you're listening to Tavis Smiley.
What's your quarrel with the world? You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
Attention small landlords who own 12 or fewer residential rental units. The City of LA Emergency Renters Assistance Program is back to help small landlords and is now accepting applications. Apply for up to 6 months of rental arrears for low-income residential tenants behind on rent. Applications will be accepted until October 31st, 2023 at 6 p.m. Go online 24/7 at housing.lacity.org or call 888-379-3150 to see if you qualify and apply today. City of LA Small Landlords. This program is for you.
Thinking about hosting a podcast and don't know where to start? Morris Media Studios has you covered. We're a professional podcast and voiceover studio located in Leimert Park. We specialize in recording and live streaming audio and video podcasts. Let us help you set up, record, and distribute your podcast. Hosting a podcast is a great way to bring awareness to your business, product, or good cause. For more info, visit morrismediastudios.com or give us a call at 323-815-4204.
A sense of peace, a place to kick back and put down roots, a lasting legacy. However you define home, at City National, we're committed to helping you get there with our City National Ladder Up Home Loan Program. Find the full benefits at cnb.com/ladderuphome. City National Bank, here for our clients and communities. Ladder Up program is available only in select areas. Terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. City National Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. NMLS ID 536994.
In Big Tobacco's Fantasyland, children are the future. Here, tobacco companies are committed to higher education, offering scholarships to students who submit essays about the benefits of vaping. The tobacco industry even sponsors summer camps for kids. Don't worry, the tobacco-sponsored programs have been linked to leaving your kids more interested in smoking. In Big Tobacco's Fantasyland, the world's deadliest industry is your child's friend. See reality at undo.org.
Sounds different, huh? This is Tavis Smiley.
So, Paul Henderson, two things that have come to light now about this killer in Maine, Robert R. Carr II. We now know, as of yesterday, that one gun shop owner declined to let him complete purchase of firearm sound suppressor. That's a silencer. It's called a silencer, a firearm sound suppressor. He wanted to purchase this to muzzle the sound of his gunfire. Go figure. And this particular gun shop owner declined to let him do it because on his form that he filled out, he disclosed that he had mental health issues. He literally disclosed this on the federal form. And this particular gun shop owner then refused to let him complete the purchase. He goes to another gun shop store not too far away. He's allowed to purchase the silencer, and they, for some reason, end up delivering it to the first store. So he picks it up at the store that denied him purchase of it. There's an irony for you. But at one point in this process, at least one gun shop owner stopped this process 3 months before this shooting. This is 3 months before the shooting. He's denied this silencer by this one gun shop owner. And then we learned that weeks before this massacre, cops were sent to his home amid concern that he was going to snap and commit a mass shooting. So 3 months prior, we knew he had mental health issues. And then weeks prior, the cops are literally at his house. And yet, 3 weeks later, almost 20 people are dead, more injured. And yet America will not admit that we have a gun problem, or frankly, that the system of getting access to guns in this problem is also screwed up. I digress. What say you, Paul Henderson?
Now, you have raised all the big issues, but let's unpack them. Let me start with the mental health issues, because we know that folks that engage in activities like this are beyond just sociopaths. They are reflections of mental health, and it's not a surprise. It's almost predictable at this point in the game that we have so many of these mass shooters, and when it gets unpacked and when they do the investigation post an incident, all of the people around the individuals are saying that there were mental health issues, that they were in fact sociopaths. They did have challenges that people knew about and had tried to intervene with, and this is no different. We also know, just looking at statistics, you know, Tavis, I love statistics because you don't get to argue with what the statistics say. 30% of all of the folks that are engaged in these mass killings involving guns are also suicidal. And so we have to figure out what the approach is that we're going to take. And I think when you talk about the approach in response to what we already know, the facts about these mass shootings, what are we going to do? I believe that approach should be coming from the national level and not be deferred to the state and local levels, which is what we're doing in this country. And that's why you see such a wide variety of laws, rules, and regulations that feels catch-meal or catch-as-you-can, piecemeal approach about gun safety. Because we had, in this case with Robert Carr, we had these big flags that could have been flags and or restrictions depending on his jurisdiction. These are tragedies that could have been avoided, but for the location of where they occurred. And that's exactly the problem. Even when we have had approaches in the past at a national level, you know, just this June, the Biden-Harris administration passed the Safer Communities Act. That was the $750 million for crisis intervention, for mental health courts and veterans assistance courts. But that's the carrot, not the stick.
Hold that thought for a second. That's the carrot, not the stick. We'll continue when we come forward. Our guest is Paul Henderson.
Interrogating and unpacking. That's what we do around here. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
What's up, party people? It's your favorite MC's favorite rapper, MC Light here. And we're celebrating 50 years of hip-hop, authentically powered by Cadillac. And we're going to take it way back to where it started. It was only fitting that hip-hop began with teenagers at a back-to-school jam in the rec room of a South Bronx apartment complex by an 18-year-old brother. By the way, I'm also sure he had a Cadillac parked outside. He noticed the energy on the dance floor when he switched between two turntables, extending the beats, repeating the breaks, and never losing the rhythms. And that was the birth of hip-hop. And from that moment, it took off.
For more on how Cadillac is celebrating hip-hop's 50th, visit Cadillac.com/audacity.
We're celebrating 1 year of the K. From checking out the vibrant art and diverse dining in Leimert Park to cheering on your favorite team in Inglewood, you can choose your own adventure when you ride the Metro K-Line. Leave the car at home and go Metro. Visit metro.net/K-Line.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment through the arts. Tia Chucha Central Cultural is on a mission to transform community in the Northeast San Fernando Valley and beyond through ancestral knowledge, the arts, literacy, and creative engagement. The Northeast San Fernando Valley has a population of about 500,000, the size of the city of Oakland, yet it has no bookstores, art galleries, or full-fledged cultural spaces until Tia Chuchas opened its doors in 2001. Founded by renowned poet and activist Luis Rodriguez, Tia Chuchas Cultural Center provides a year-round free or low-cost arts and literacy bilingual intergenerational programming in mural painting, music, dance, writing, visual arts, healing art sessions, and healing talking circles. Activities also include Mexica, Aztec dance, indigenous cosmology, philosophy, and 2 weekly open mic nights, one in Spanish, the other in English. In addition, they host author readings, film screenings, and art exhibits. To express yourself, heal yourself, attend an event, or volunteer, please visit www.tiachucha.org. That's TIACHUCHA.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Ready to re-examine your assumptions and expand your inventory of ideas? More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
Got just a few minutes left for Paul Henderson to finish making his point. Paul, you were saying that is the carrot, not the stick. What's that?
Well, that in terms of trying to curb the violence. We have the encouragement, but we don't have the strong stick regulating what needs to happen. The incidents that we're talking about specifically are like some of the green, yellow, and red flags that we've been talking about in the press. Those green, yellow, and red flags are monikers to identify the level of restriction that states have in terms of their approach flagging mental health issues for people trying to buy guns. So a red flag is when the police or the member of the public can go to the court and restrict someone from having access to a gun or being able to purchase guns or even having the guns taken away. And in Maine, and this is important, that is in Maine, it's a yellow flag because on top of there are more restrictions to having law enforcement. So just like you said, even though they had been out to the house before and law enforcement had some concerns, the only way to block someone or restrict their gun access in Maine is on top of having one of those agents act as take an affirmative act. They also need a note and an analysis from a medical professional on top of their own reasonable judgment. And that's what makes it a yellow flag. And that's what did not happen in Maine, which is part of the reasons why the standards are a little bit lower. One of the interesting things about Maine is, and again, here's some more stats, the national average of gun ownership is about 32%. And it's 45% in Maine. A lot of that has to do with there being a lot of rural areas and hunting being a really popular activity out there. But that doesn't change safety. And you have to look at public safety because the priority is protecting our citizens. And this is before we get into an analysis about race and gun ownership as well. But we have to take a better approach and be proactive about how we want to protect ourselves against actions like this when we already know what the answers are. Yeah. We have to have stronger gun control specifically to target people in need or that are in crisis to prevent them from having access to weapons. Definitely these weapons of mass destruction like the semi-automatic weapons. And that's what we've been talking about.
Yeah. Let me close on this note, and this is a pivot. But it's a parenthetical point, but I think one that is worth raising given that Paul just mentioned the issue of guns and race. I've said on this program before that the data tell us over the last few years that the fastest growing group of new gun owners in this country are black folk. And black folk have been going out and buying guns at an increasing and in some ways alarming rate because you see all the pushback that we're getting. You see the white supremacy that's still raging in this country. And so black folk have said to themselves, let me arm myself to protect myself. Just take a wild guess as to the group that we're told by gun owners, gun shop owners rather, the group that's now buying guns at a faster clip than anybody else. Anybody want to take a wild guess? The Jewish community.
I want to know.
Wow. The Jewish community.
Wow.
Just reading some data this morning that Jews, our Jewish brothers and sisters, are buying guns like nobody's business right now. And so the same thing that motivated black folk to buy guns are now motivating Jews to buy guns. And this country just continues to arm itself. I digress. I offer no commentary about that, not at this moment. But that's some new data out today that black folk have been buying guns at a fast clip. And now our Jewish brothers and sisters are buying guns at a fast clip. That is the nation in which we live, sadly. I digress for now. Paul Henderson, brilliant as always. We'll do it again, my friend. All the best to you. Talk soon.
So looking forward to it. Thanks for having me, Tavis.
Thank you, sir. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
Thank you for sharing a part of your Monday with us here on